Cool. All right. Hello, everybody. You should know me by now, but if you don't, my name is Richard from Falcon Coffees. We ran a small survey with you guys leading up to the camp, which we had a slightly disappointing response rate to, so shame on you a little bit for that. But we wanted to base a discussion around sustainability, mainly because this is a pretty hot topic in our industry at the moment, and I think a lot of us are still trying to work out exactly what that means for our business, where it fits into our supply chains and our operations, and where we can direct our funds and our efforts to get the best sort of response for those efforts and funds. So we put together a 6-question survey, and we're just going to run through some of the sort of headline things that we pulled out of that survey, some of the interesting points, and then these 4 lovely people are going to discuss it and add their thoughts on it. So we have Edgar here from Capricorn Coffees in Brazil. He works with a small co-op and a range of producers as an exporter. We have Anya from Nespresso. She's a brand ambassador for Nespresso here in Poland.
Brand ambassador is only George Clooney. I'm coffee ambassador. I'm only coffee ambassador. That's a big difference.
Coffee ambassador, sorry. And we have Edwin Harrison, who is the owner of Artisan Coffee Stores in London, which is a small chain of coffee stores in the West End. And he has recently just started with his own roastery to supply those stores and some other customers. And then we have Joanna Lawson from Caravella Coffee as well. So before we get into the discussion, I just wanted to frame the idea of sustainability a little bit with the idea of the triple bottom line, which some of you will be familiar with. It's kind of a management model that someone at McKinsey might use, but it's quite useful in separating out what the pillars of sustainability are. So the triple bottom line says that you must, to sort of fulfill the social contract that we all have, then you must do your best to improve the social, environmental, and economic aspects of sustainability. And obviously the economic is kind of the baseline one, because if you're not solvent, then you're not doing anything. But you must also focus on the other two. So we'll look at how those 3 pillars fit into some of your responses. Right, so our first question was, in which of the following areas is your organization's work and sustainability the most successful or most important? And I kind of broke these out into the 3 pillars. So out of 24 responses, we had 11 people said social, 6 said economic, and 4 said environmental. And then we had 2 that said that they're not interested in sustainability at all. And then we did a follow-up question which asked we asked how your work influences your decisions, and many of the comments sort of related to personal relationships between sort of roasters and suppliers, and transparency in the supply chain. So my first question was to Anya about, as a sort of coffee ambassador of a very large company, do you think that the kind of personal relationships that a lot of the micro roasters are talking about is sustainable when a company reaches the sort of multinational level?
I guess it's always about personal relationships, because otherwise, well, you need to build a kind of trust with those people that are running their farms for, generations. So of course, how we are doing it at Nespresso, we have 300 agronomists, and they are working in the field whole year. So sometimes they even call members, or even treated like members of the family. So basically they are our representatives in the farms, and helping the farmers to getting better quality, but also better yield. Because for us, what is really important, if we're talking about sustainability, is quality, of course, but also productivity, which is even more important if we're talking about sustainable farming. And transparency to us is not only about relationships, direct relationships, but also about being very transparent about what you expect, and really need to be really clear to the farmers and both sides, and also transparency with prices. So what we strive for is really like a very clear information, what we are paying for more, and it's always very clearly stated in all invoices and everything. So of course we are doing our purchasing through traders, but the premiums has to be really clear. What is the premium for? Which is basically for being our AAA member program. It's for the farmer as well. It's part of it is for the investments. So it's really important to be very transparent in payments.
Do any of you have any other comments on that?
I'd like to say that Nespresso does an amazing job in Brazil. They have clusters. I hope they grow enough to have clusters reaching our area. It is a beautiful work they do, and something very important is also what Anya has said about the payment that they do to the producers. The question is, how much longer can we continue paying producers not what they are, what they deserve for the coffees they produce, because they might go out of business and start doing other stuff like sugarcane. So this project that Nespresso has, it's fantastic. We have a similar model. We do have agronomists also that visit. We are not so big like Nespresso. I mean, big in the area they cover. We cover 5 different regions, and we have agronomists visiting the farms, the 19 estates that we help, and also not only the states, but a small cooperative of 380 families. It's a settlement of 3 hectares each. So I think we all have to play our role in sustainability, in how do we help them in the social aspects, and also on teaching them the importance of environmental practices.
Great, thank you very much. So the next question we asked was about your coffee suppliers and the people that you're purchasing from. And 60% of you said you wanted supply chain transparency and supply chain investment. And obviously transparency is a great driver for social and economic sustainability levels. A few respondents mentioned that certifications were sort of looked at a little bit for the environmental purposes, and people were using them as a sort of a check and balance for environmental purposes. I mean, Joanna, do you have anything to say on that? You guys do quite a lot with the environmental stuff within your supply chain, and have you seen how a difference between the certified farms and the non-certified farms within your supply chains, or the people that you work with?
Yes and no. That's a very kind of worms kind of a question. With regards to certifications, I think many people sit on different sides of the fence on that one. But with regards to specifically kind of social norms and environmental norms, I think what the certifications do is they have kind of standards which everyone can adhere to and which farmers must adhere to if they want to be certified. And I think what a lot of us have found in specialty is that because we tend to be working with smaller farms who are very focused on quality, that there's that kind of intention anyway. So if you are a smaller farm and you're trying to produce a very high quality coffee, you're obviously very much caring for your farm. You're not going to pollute the rivers, you're not going to pollute the water sources, or use too many chemicals in the production of your coffee, because it wouldn't be of benefit to the sustainability of your farm. So that's something that's kind of generally employed anyway. And I think, the kind of certification question can be a long discussion, but I think what's helpful for that is that it does show that somebody's been and audited the farms, and for somebody who doesn't get the chance to go, that can be a helpful thing. In our case, we're working with small farms, for the most part, sort of average 2 to 3 hectares. We don't necessarily see a huge difference between farms which happen to be certified and those which don't, just because usually the practices that we recommend, so we, as you guys do have, an agronomy team that works very closely with the farmers and certainly is making recommendations for as minimal use of chemicals as possible, just because it's in the long term, not necessarily beneficial to the environmental sustainability of the farm.
Do you find that the producers, I guess to both of you, you find producers are as concerned about the environment as they are about the economic and the sort of social impacts of what they're doing in the communities that they're in? Is there one of these three factors that kind of stands out as the leading concern for producers that you work with?
I think I'll just jump in. I think that's an education thing, and I think that over time, I think in this day and age, people know that it all goes together, and I think maybe 10 years ago people didn't, and were very much taught that, particularly in some countries, that it was all about productivity and yield. And so it was all about produce as much as you can, get a real high yield, plant resistant varietals, use these chemicals, which you can buy them subsidized, let's get loads of coffee out. And then, again, that's one of the wonderful things about specialty is it's about quality, not quantity. And with that, there's been a lot of education around, a sustainable farm, running a sustainable farm, and understanding that you can't just cover it in chemicals, for example. You've got to have a sustainable ecosystem, and only with that can you produce high quality coffee. And also, of course, the farmers themselves. Most people don't want to use chemicals, don't want to really push their farm too hard in terms of yield. Most people want to produce a beautiful ecosystem, full of birds and animals and a wide variety of different crops, and everybody, I think, is learning that is not only a kind of nice and pleasant thing to do, but it's the most sustainable thing in the long term as well. And I think in specialty we're kind of having to undo a lot of work which has been pushed over a long period of time by certain government initiatives which have been pushing higher yields.
Yeah, we believe that it's our role to educate and help farms and producers. And when we work with a group of women, 20 women, that decided not to do stripping against the guidances of the husbands and went for selective picking. They're doing an amazing job and getting better paid. But at the end, we also train them. We take them to the lab and share, cupping lessons so that they can understand better how their coffees are scoring and then sell it for a better price. So education is part of the work we do with the producers, not only in cupping, but also on the agronomy side. Our agronomists visit. We have a project that it's called the Four Seasons Project. So it means that we are out there during the entire year, not only buying the coffees and selling, but being with them along the cycle so that we can share practices. And we also created a system. It's the Capricornio Club, which is like if you deliver a micro lot with 88 points, you get 500 points per bag. Or if you give us a 82 coffee, you get 2 points. So at the end, we are stimulating them to produce better quality. And as a prize at the end of the cycle, they will be taken to Costa Rica, which is very similar to the region where we are, and benchmark and learn from the producers in other countries. Or they might be taken to SCAA or SCAE for their conferences. So it's our responsibility to show that there is a world out there that is different and that they should continue investing in quality, that it will compensate and pay the price. We also are very active in social projects. There is a small farm that works with people that have drug addiction and alcohol addiction, but they spend a year at this farm trying to get clean, and in order to get clean, they have a coffee feud. So we'll help them throughout the year with the all the guidance for the coffee production, then help also them to produce better coffees to get better prices, and then help this project. Kids that we sponsor, choirs and education. We have an essay competition that is held in 2 different locations. So we have more than 3,000 students enrolled in these activities. And as a result, they get a week program from seed to cup so that they understand that they might be an agronomist or study administration and find an opportunity in coffee. That are so many professions out there that can be coming out of coffee. So there are beautiful things, and it's our responsibility to get involved and make the difference. Otherwise, we feel that the community and will, shift to other crops like sugarcane, and the sustainability of my company, existing is also depending on the good job of these people. So that we always try to be connected with them.
Yeah, just coming back to the certifications, because there was a couple of years there was a trend, like we tend to say like fair trade is not fair and things like that. I think like Nespresso is cooperate with 40 something different NGOs, universities, and other people who are specialized in what they do for years. So I don't. That's why, of course, we created our own program because quality is important for us as well. But we created this program with Rainforest Alliance, and also we cooperate with Fair Trade a lot because we believe that Nespresso has certain capabilities and knowledge, and we know what we do and we're doing good in certain fields. But like Fair Trade and Rainforest Alliance and different NGOs, they know what they do in their field. So it's good to cooperate with them, because really we're talking about very different reality there. For us, like it's obvious, like nobody wants to destroy the environment and so on and so forth. While we are facing like still child labor and forced labor and really basic things that for us are maybe like really something that does not exist. Well, it exists, and the same with the environment. Many times those people just don't know that they are not doing good for the environment. So they need the information, and they need also the proof that why should they change, and that it will be really profitable for them. So that's one thing. I think it's good to cooperate with organizations that know how to deal with biodiversity and with social and economical and environmental issues. And the other thing is about really succession. That's a big issue, and lack of labor, because working with coffee is a tough job. And also it's very risky, and it's not well paid. I never seen a farmer driving a Porsche Cayenne or something. So of course, what we have to do is really help them, not only give them like a higher price, because many times they are not entrepreneurs. So also to teach them how to manage better, how to become a better businessman, simply, and profitability is the key, and also productivity. And sometimes it's really like a simple thing. For instance, in Ethiopia, what we observed is like they didn't even know that pruning. They were afraid of pruning, because they thought like if they prune the coffees, that they will have to wait like 2 years for the yield. So we had to show them that pruning and composting is good actually for you, because you can produce more coffee and then earn more money. So sometimes it's really like basic things, and for us it's like very clear, but for the farmers, no.
Just to Edwin now, I think this is super interesting, and these kind of investments are so needed in so many parts of the coffee supply chain. But obviously there's a cost involved in that, and the person who bears that cost is the end consumer, and you guys as the roasters, it's all sort of built into the cost of your coffee. And I think sometimes in the specialty industry, and maybe you guys feel differently about this, but sometimes we get really caught up as roasters and sort of retailers about those guys who get really excited about the really elite, super amazing in coffees and they just love everything about coffee and happy to pay whatever they want for it. But I think a lot of us are starting to realize that the bulk of the consumers are not so concerned. And one of the things I really like about what Edwin and his wife Magda have done is they've been really, really aware of who their customers are and exactly what they want. And it's a big part of their success. So if you could explain a little bit about how you've sort of made that line.
Hello. So I come at this probably from a completely different side. We run coffee shops. We've got the 4 coffee shops, and we look at what our customers want. And I'd love to be able to answer this question by sort of saying our customers are coming in and asking about sustainability within our business and the transparency and traceability. Our customers worry about the Wi-Fi password. They worry about how long the waiting times are. And actually, in 6 years of doing this and having around 2,000 customers coming in every day, I've only had one question, email, about whether our business was sustainable. And I think that in itself is probably the problem. There isn't really a market force pushing us owners to make a difference, to make a change. Because if suddenly all my customers said, yes, I need it to be traceable, yes, I need your business to be more sustainable, we would make that change within an instant. If our customers say our tables aren't clean enough, do you know what we do? Training on cleaning. It's cause and effect. And I think the problem here is, therefore, it just becomes almost a personal decision to the owners. What do Magda and I think? How do we feel about sustainability? And that is a very difficult problem, because then it's just whether we can, sort of the idea of sustainability can sway a few individuals. So I think in long term, for this to really change our behavior, it has to start becoming more market driven. And I don't think that's going to happen very quickly. Whether it's elastic to do with price, whether it's value added and things like this, no. There are many more forces to play here. For example, what is the coffee shop up the road charging? Just because we're sustainable, can I charge more? No, of course not. I have to be in the same level as the market. I wish I could. I once changed all our light bulbs to electric, the efficiency ones. It cost me £2,000. We've got masses of light bulbs. Coffee shops seem to. Did we get any more customers because our light bulbs had changed? No. Of course not. So therefore, it's a cost to become sustainable, but it's not, in my opinion, a value added. I wish it was the other way. I wish I could tell you it was very important to our customers, but in all honesty, the answer is no.
Thank you. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I kind of sometimes think that, as you were saying, Richard, that we kind of get caught up in our bubble, and we forget that our consumers, the end guys, they just want a good cup of coffee as quickly and as efficiently as possible on their way to work, or maybe to enjoy with some Wi-Fi in a downtime moment. So yeah, I think that is definitely a consumer consciousness thing. But I do also think that we should all give ourselves a pat on the back, because for us already within the industry, already by buying specialty coffee, then anything to do with sustainability isn't some sort of extra thing that we need to think about. It's just inherent to all of our business models already. It's not some sort of project-based thing that everybody needs to think about and save up a pot of money for. That's what we've all been banging the drum about for years, is by paying higher prices, then everybody can manage their own farms instead of driving prices down and then going, oh, and here's $5,000 to build a school. So the notion of paying more money for better quality products, whether it be wine or whatever, and in this case, it's coffee, I think is inherently means that all of our business models have a kind of sustainability contingent built in as, basic hygiene as part of the work that we do. So luckily that takes the brain work or the kind of extra worry away from you guys as customers of having to think about, how to approach that. And obviously anything extra is always wonderful, but just by kind of working in specialty and buying specialty coffee and serving specialty, you're already doing a lot of that. And that's something that I often try and communicate is can we talk to our can we work with our roaster partners to start supplying their coffee to big businesses, for example? And perhaps one of the sales points is that business, just by buying coffee from one of you lovely people, they can tick a CSR box. Because just by choosing a supplier that they know is doing a great job, they're already complying with lots of wonderful social and sustainability goals.
Yeah.
I have a question to, is it Richard? From the coffee shop? Yeah.
Hi.
I guess almost a challenge. I have 2 coffee shops as well as the farm. And I usually carry about 8 coffees on the menu. In Brazil, definitely more than England, people are price sensitive. But the coffees that sell the most week in and week out are my cheapest coffee and my most expensive coffee. Yep. And it's also, my most expensive coffee is a shade-grown organic coffee. And it's also the other thing that I notice kind of on the side is it's whatever the barista wants to say. So if you train your staff to tell a story, and then you have that obviously you don't want to be more expensive than the coffee shop down the street, so you give them an option. But if you give people an option, I don't know, for me it's worked, and I would argue people in Brazil know less about sustainability than in Europe. So it's just a challenge.
Well, I think it's a good idea. At Artisan, unfortunately, we only offer one type of coffee at the moment, but I can't see why we couldn't add on another and see if it worked. I'd be happy to try and sort of sell it. I suppose my concern would be, now I'm thinking it through, is if we suddenly said this is a fantastically sustainable coffee, much more sustainable than what you were drinking. Oh, shit. I can see that being a bit of a problem because we're already buying good quality coffee from a very good quality roaster. So maybe it's a question of just, we're already up there selling sort of what you could argue is sustainable coffee. But yeah, I think it's, I think options give people the opportunity to choose, and that's always good. From my point of view, it's also service, flow, things like this that affect my decisions. And just by having somebody standing on the till for another 10 seconds trying to choose which coffee is actually a concern to me, because I've got to get through a certain number. We're quite high volume, our shops, and we've got to get through. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. And I completely agree with the low end and the high end are always the top sellers.
I think the good point is about the baristas. They're really selling what they want to sell. And from my experience, from my previous activities, was that they really want to sell coffees from all the fancy roasteries they can find in the world. And this is, it's really unsustainable. So what we can do in just our real life in Europe, I think we can start with commitment, because to me, sustainability is about the commitment that you make. It's the commitment the roaster make with the either directly or with the trader to buy a certain amount of coffee. But to do that, he needs to have a market. And when he faces baristas that wants to have everyday different espresso, that's not sustainable. So I think in our lives, what we can do is to work a little bit on being sustainable ourselves. And yes, barista is the first, personal step.
I see that sometimes most of our clients are asking about the sustainability practices we have. But then we provide a lot of information, but I don't see that being communicated to the consumers. I wish that were a little bit more communicated, because there are so many beautiful things happening that could be of an interest for the consumers. So I think sometimes it lies on us the responsibility of sharing more and telling more about these stories that are out there that would, at the end, help us sell more our coffees.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I think, I think nobody's really cracked it yet, how to manage that communication. Because you're trying to condense something that is quite complex and varied and often very nuanced into a little soundbite that you can feed to somebody who just wants their cappuccino in the morning. Coming up with, you were talking about your slogan earlier. It can be a challenge. I mean, it needs to be done. We have to find it's our duty as roasters and retailers, it's our duty to the producers to find a way to communicate that story, but it's very difficult.
Which is, of course, what the certifications did.
Exactly.
Sorry to be controversial,
Totally,
but that's
yeah.
exactly what they did, was a way of summarizing all of the things that we're trying to unpick and explain. And I'm not promoting in any way going back to that, but I'm just saying I think it's really interesting that it took a long time for them to kind of get there, for the consumers to be able to understand something by seeing a picture that we're all now in it together trying to kind of undo, and then be able to communicate something again. Because as much as we think that the consumers should spend 20 minutes listening to our wonderful barista, I also think that our consumers have the right just to buy a coffee that tastes good on the way to work. I think that's okay as well. So I think, as you say, our challenge is how do we do that, and how do we get ourselves known to be roasters, importers, wherever we are in the chain, of people who do things right, and somehow people just know. And that sustainability, as we were saying before, doesn't become some sort of add-on. It's just, for want of a better phrase, basic hygiene within what we do.
That leads on really nicely to our next question. So we asked you guys about your measurement devices and how you're measuring any sustainable activities that you have. And almost nobody is measuring what they're doing. And there's big companies are included in that. It's difficult to collect the data. Sometimes it's very difficult to sort of verify some of that data. So it'd be interesting to hear what you guys are either like working on, what you've seen done that works really well, and then maybe some advice of things that, small things that some of the roasters could do, or, in the case of Joe or Edgar, how they can hold you accountable for some of these measurements.
Can I? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So just in terms of the impacts, I think, I filled in that form as well, and Rich kindly circulated the results, and I think that we were the only ones that filled it in and said, yeah, we're measuring our impact. And it's a really kind of difficult thing to measure. And it's very easy to kind of make stuff up to make it look like you're measuring it correctly, which is worse than just not measuring it at all, in my opinion. And the way that we measure it is by quality improvement with the farmers that we're working with. So we buy X amount of coffee from farmer number one, and it's this quality grade. And the next year we buy X amount, and it's this quality grade or this quality grade. And the idea is that with time, the quality improves. And for us, that's a measure of so many things, because that means that if the quality is improving, inherently they're getting higher prices for that coffee, which means the economic sustainability of the farm is improving. It also means that if they're working with us and they're part of the programs that we use, that to have got to that higher level of quality within the same volume, or indeed increased volumes, means that their practices on the farms are inherently more efficient as well, and that they're adopting the practices that we are recommending, which means that also the environmental standards will improve, and yada, yada, yada. So that's quite a simple metric that we look at. So the more coffee produced, and then the more coffee produced at a higher quality, because we're able to sell that, because we're buying on certain price levels and we're able to pay more for higher quality, then we can measure the overall impact that will have just by measuring the cup score and the quality of the coffee.
You know, we pretty much do the same in terms of measuring the quality of what they are delivering and if that has increased over the years. We also do a pilot project on water use reduction with a consultant from Costa Rica, Leo Sanchez. So it's also teaching the small that water use is important. We will face in Brazil soon a problem with water and irrigation, and people will have to pay for using water, and this will be also have to be redistributed. Some people have concessions, and how will this work in the future? Producing coffee might be more costly, and so it's teaching them what to do and how to reduce the impact of water on their production, monitoring the quality of what they are delivering, and working close with them allows us to give guidance. That this small cooperative, Quanopi, that has 380 members, some of them have their wet milling facilities, but we help them assemble a central unit for coffee receiving and preparation, so as to take the production out of maybe 10,000 to 30,000 bags at the end. So it's how can we play our role and help these people to be taken to the next level in quality, and then by delivering better qualities to get better money and then continue, because it's what Anya was saying. There will be a problem in the future with labor. These young people, they prefer to work in a gas station, in a supermarket, or any place else, but not in the fields where you have intense heat, rain, have to wake up early, get home sometimes very late. So it's what do we do to maintain these people attracted to staying where they are? But we see beautiful examples of families, like poor families, but where two of the kids are studying agronomy and helping the family to be producing better coffees and staying in business. So getting this new generation to stay in the field and continue the beautiful work that the families do.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay, you can measure. That's a good news. And we really, we're Nestle, so we measure like everything. KPI is like what you have to do, the first thing. But what we did is, for instance, in Colombia, we built a wet mill in Jardin. And we used the external company to measure the effects. And really, in Colombia, mostly because the farms are really mostly small, so there is a problem with processing the cherries. And the farmers around were just processing like whatever they had. And many times they were polluting the water, of course. They didn't treat the water properly, and they were using a lot of water. So with this wet mill, the central mill, we were able to reduce used water by 60%. And the 40% remained was 100% of it was treated, so no pollution. There was one figure. The other figure was the economic. We always are interested in economics, so we were able to raise their well-being by 40%. And on top of that, very important thing is that when there is a harvest, of course you need to process the cherries like as fast as you can. Like you have a couple of hours. So many times they were working during the harvest time. They were working like all the time. So we measured that with the new facility, with the wet mill, every farmer was saving 3 hours of their lives. So they are saving 3 hours every day during the harvest time.
From a completely sort of other angle and much smaller than what we're talking about here, a story broke about a year ago in the UK about how you couldn't recycle takeaway cups. And it turned out in the UK about 99% of our cups don't get recycled because we just don't have the facility. But they all say recyclable on them because technically, if you find the right place in the right, which is somewhere north of England and is one small facility, it could be recycled. But the consumer didn't know this. And a chef came on and did a TV show about it. And there was outrage. Everyone was absolutely appalled by it. So Magda and I started measuring how many keep cups we sold and to try and encourage people, and we gave a discount if they obviously come in and use their keep cup, then they get a thing. And it followed almost identically like every news cycle. It was very popular for the first day, third day went down, week, 2 weeks, and now our sales of keep cups are exactly the same as they were before the story. But my point is, I think if we do look for opportunities to then push sustainability issues, and companies are quick on the mark to sort of measure and also react and promote keep cups or whatever it might be, or other ventures, then it can only be a good thing.
Yeah, you're such a cynic. No, it's good. I mean, you see those patterns replay themselves over and over again. And it comes back to your point at the beginning that it's very difficult for us to communicate the need to consumers. And I think a lot of the packaging actually is very misleading. You know, even the biodegradable bags and things require commercial biodegradable units, which run at 70 degrees Celsius. And so if it goes into a compost bin, it doesn't break down. If it goes into a landfill, it doesn't break down. And there's very few of those commercial composting units around. So even if you're using biodegradable bags, then you've got to work out exactly where they're going and how they're ending up, because most of them go into a landfill where they never break down. Cool. Do you guys, we've got to wrap up, but do you have any other final thoughts or anything else you want to say? Of course you do.
Of course I do. Sorry, because I know that we don't have very long now. I'll try and keep it brief. But we were talking about the triple bottom line, right? And we've spent most of this time talking about environmental sustainability. And I think it's really important that do we have any Germans? And there's that Brecht saying about like first fill the stomach and then the morals, and that's like a really horrible, cheesy quote to use. But my point was, economic sustainability is the one that kind of leads to then social and environmental sustainability. And I think that's, again, hopefully we can give ourselves a relative pat on the back for, buying decently priced coffee. And inherently, hopefully, we're all doing a good job in making sure that there's something that goes along with that to ensure that the other elements of what we interpret as sustainability can go along with that. But I think that's a really, really important thing, is that, we do get sometimes questioned on the price of coffee. And I think more or less it's safe to say, with probably some exceptions, but hopefully within specialty, there's not too many people getting fat and driving Ferraris. I think mostly when you're spending your money, you're spending it on something good. So I think, really do question where money's going and question why things cost more. But I think don't assume if things cost more, it's to buy Ferraris. I think usually if things cost more, it's for education programs, it's for, sending agronomists out to visit farms. And I think that's a really important thing. Definitely ask questions of why things cost more, but don't necessarily be skeptical about it, because it's usually in the name of sustainability.
Great. That's perfect to end on, so I'll leave it there. Cool, thank you very much.